what you asked me just now on the globalization and whether there will be a break or a change in what has been happening. So let me put that in context. Firstly, I think we need to come and seek a new normal. That new normal is not going to happen very quickly. We need to understand what is the dislocation that has happened. At least in our lifetimes, we have not seen this dislocation. So if you look at a very simple thing, we can communicate online. We can communicate on the net. We can use all the new tools of the digital economy. But if we want to use the tools that we are used to, that is be present somewhere, take a plane, fly there, get to our customer and interact, that's not going to be possible. So you have a huge barrier in terms of physical movement. And we will all have to understand how we are going to overcome that as we look for a new normal and look for global trade flows. That's the first point. Second point is, even if countries would wish that global trade flows be looked at in a new context, there will be more localization. I don't think it is going to happen very quickly because capacity will have to set up. I would think in normal times, these days, setting up any new capacity is a 12-month time frame. But I'm probably, I would put it this way, that at this point in time, we probably are looking at maybe an 18-month time frame before we can put in a new capacity. I think at that point in time, I would believe that realism will settle. That is, are we really better off localizing or are we better off leaving things as it were? Let me take just the Indian example. Yes, there could be a lot of businesses coming into India and so on. There's an opportunity at this point in time because people could be dissatisfied. But there are a few reference points I don't think we have thought through, nor anybody else. We are just now seeing a reversal of workforce from where they were to their homes. There's huge reverse migration that is happening of people. I have no clarity as to when these people will come back to their work centers. Now, the assumption of industry is that they will come back. I would only raise a question here, over what time frame? Let me also assume that they will come back, but over what time frame? It's only after that that you can make plans for localizing something or to get a new industry in and so on. So my belief is that in a whole lot of areas, localization will be something desired, but probably will take a little more time than what we probably have given to this process or thought about this process. So 12 months is not going to be the time frame. Probably a minimum of 18 to 24 months before I have clarity on the localization process of global trade flows.
Fantastic, Mr. Kamath. So we'll come back to this topic of how India can participate in this trend of localization in coming questions. But before that, let me address another question to you. We are all talking about the recovery, and we are all talking about, as you also mentioned, what shape it could take, what speed it could take, or what could be the size of the recovery in that given time frame. So it's the shape, it's the speed, and the extent of or the size of the recovery. How do you see that? How do you see the recovery in India, but also globally? How long will it take? And what can we do in India as a country to drive growth in the short term? What measures can we take?
It's a very, very, probably the most important question for us at this point in time as a country, and indeed in a global context. I will take you back for just 1 minute to 2008, 2009. When that challenge happened, looking at various factors, listening to certain global leaders, and then looking at the context in India, and at that time I happened to be the president of the CII, I had to make a statement as to what shape this recovery will take. And I did not, on the spur of the moment, make a statement. I heard people out, reasoned with myself, and then said this is going to be a very short recovery. The time will be very short. It will be a V-shaped recovery. And indeed, that's what happened. Things fell for about 2 or 3 months. And thereafter, there was suddenly other side of the V, accelerating in terms of what had happened. I think there are two reasons. The whole pain was very short-lived. for most people. Pain was long-lived for the financial services sector. But for the rest of the economy, it was very short-lived. And the economy could come out of it. And there were certain well-known things that were done. We pumped in more money, brought interest rates down. And India also did the same thing. I would think that everybody worked together and we came around pretty quickly. I would say within 3 to 6 months, we were back on our heels. Now, our feet. Now, the problem, if you look at it very simply here, it is a very interesting thing that is happening. We still do not know where is the peak in some countries, including, I would say, most of the BRICS countries other than China. We are not very sure where the peak is. And in India, we're still trying to figure out whether we are coming to a plateau or where we are. I won't go into that, I'm no expert. But which would mean that we have lost 6 months. We're going to probably lose another 6 months before we find the depth of the challenge before us. And then we start the corrective action. This, I don't mean the government, I mean business. So I'm looking at least a U-shaped recovery. Now, typically, then you can ask a question, how long is the U? Again, now I don't want to be sounding a pessimist because I have never ever been a pessimist. Since one thing that people would say about me is you can't get a negative response from Mr. Kamath. The year goes in the public eye here in India. But this point in time, I don't want to be a pessimist, but I'm saying that I can't put a time frame. It certainly is not going to be less than a year. How longer is the trough of the U? We will see. And the longer it is, the more challenging it is, the more pain there is. But as you ask questions, I will probably put the brighter side of things also into context.
Fantastic. All right. I think one of the key measures or key expectations everyone has, especially from the government when it comes to the recovery, is for the stimulus, and just not in India but around the world. But all these stimulus measures, they always come at a price. So one question that we have from our friends here is, given that the world debt is already so high and was already high over the last couple of years, this fresh global stimulus, while it might help in the short term, aren't we laying the foundation for a fresh new debt crisis around the world?
Again, as I said, it's a new normal. So what we are pumping in becomes a crisis under certain circumstances. It becomes a crisis, like big stimulus has come in and that becomes a crisis, when there is a whole lot of frivolous buying around monies that were pumped in. Now, this time around, and typically along with that is the question, then isn't it also not inflationary? But this time around, the challenge is in a completely different context. You are broken. It says economies are broken, countries are broken, systems are broken. You need the money to put these broken pieces together. And we can sequence the pieces that need to be put together. And I'm not talking of India, I'm talking of any country. And then we can look at, I leave all of you who are all thinkers to look at which piece should find importance in India. But the specific question, I do not think it will be inflationary, nor will it create a debt crisis. This debt crisis, if it were to happen, earlier on when we talk of debt crisis, we talk of debt crisis in the hands of either, say the banks or the borrower and so on. This time, if there's a crisis, a debt crisis, it will be a debt crisis in the hands of the government. But as I said, it's the new normal. But then let me go back to, where is it that any stimulus will need to be spent? And I think the learnings are very simple. Initially, I think it is for sustenance. In the Indian context, I would use the word subsistence because that's the word that we have been used to for a long period of time. In the global context, probably it is sustenance in the developed country context. The two could mean vastly different things, but when everything is normalized, it means the same thing. You see vast number of people queuing up in the US for a food handout. So, you're basically coming down to subsistence there also. So I use the word subsistence. So we need to make sure that there is enough for subsistence in the hands of people for an extended period of time. Now, I would think that the government did well to put that money, however small it might look to us, who are abroad and who look at larger amounts as disposable, putting them into the hands of I think the finance minister and the prime minister articulated it as a number of kilos of food grain that will be put into the hands of people. To me, that is basic subsistence, which is very much important. Now, that has to continue for quite some time till these people who now are seeking subsistence are able to earn it for themselves. So that engine of their ability to earn has to be repaired. But I'll stay on this for 2 minutes because then it becomes easier for me to put in context. And maybe India is a good example to talk about this. Because where are the migrants going back? Where is, which part of the economy is probably going to come back first? And surprisingly, my answer is agriculture is going to probably come back first. Again, all of you friends, I'm sure, yes, there are a few of us from India joining in. But if people who are not in India have not seen what is happening here, it's very interesting. Now, we have had 2 months of everything shut, but for somebody who can afford, his supply line is working. Whether it is the green supply, whether it's the fruit supply, whether it's the grain supply, it's working at, I would say, 98 to 99% efficiency throughout the country. What is the challenge? I put that caveat in for somebody who would afford. My view is that it should be affordable to everybody. And I'm sure that's the government's view. They're prioritizing what should be in the hands of people because they have limited resources to go around. But that's the reason why I'm saying the agriculture side is ticking. Probably the next thing that will come back in full force is agri-processing, which I think is very desirable. And we talked about localization. What I would like to see is agri-processing now going to the village or the taluka or the district. And this is the agri-district, not the manufacturing district. Because that is where a large mass of our people who have gone home have gone. So it does two things. It creates production centers near it creates processing centers very near production centers. That is agro-production centers. Provide employment to these people. And most of these industries could be fairly labor intensive, provides sustenance to these people. So we are talking of, and probably we are in a 6 month to 1 year period, these sort of businesses could be set up. So what I'd like to see is agro-processing move with a good agri-harvest that we've had, and we foresee in the next crop season, if these businesses can go back to where they belong, I think things will happen. So that is the first part of it, which is subsistence and certain industries around that, which will benefit everybody, provide employment. So I would believe that a good part of our employment problem to people who today don't have an employment could be provided in this context. Then comes in the small and medium industry, which we are today using the acronym MSMEs. I think a fairly large package has been given to them. There has been debate in the media. I'm not going to go into the debate, but I'll put it this way as a banker. If, $60 billion of lending a banker is told you can do, if you do it on the back of a government guarantee, I would think that it will be somebody who doesn't deserve to be a banker and who's doing business. Any banker worth his salt is going to lend. Lending is a banker's dharma. So he has to lend, and particularly when somebody says, I'm taking your risk. So I hope the credit flow is to people who have the ability to pay, which will get them to kickstart, basically for working capital purposes. Working capital, including meeting wages, suppliers' payments, and so on, because otherwise that whole value chain is today stuck in various bottlenecks. That debottlenecking is $60 billion. 5 lakh crores will probably $65 billion will probably achieve that. So that will provide employment again to people once this debottlenecking starts. There's a very interesting third sector in India, which nobody talks about, but probably employs more people than the manufacturing sector. That is a self-employed sector. That is your buyer or a buyer on the road who's selling you a snack, who's selling you a product, who's delivering something to your home. A vast army of people who are self-employed. And very interestingly, in the 5 years that I have been away from India, I see that they have prospered. So where they used to have a small cart and doing it themselves, now they have 2 helpers and 2 guys to probably deliver and so on. So they have become small entrepreneurs really. I see them coming back because to them, it's very quick. They could come back very quickly as they basically need to look at the raw materials that they need to start producing. But they need the customer. The customer has to come on the street to travel. For that, you need the customer to have the freedom to travel. That is the lockdown to be lifted. Again, my view is, again, I'm not passing any judgments. Wherever lockdowns have been lifted, I think they have done it in a very interesting way. India is not a small country. It's a vast country. It is several nations put together in a way when you look at the size of our provinces. Even when you look at the size of some of our districts, they are small countries. So you could have these working as economic centers and working very effectively and providing this third leg of employment. So I see 3 legs of employment coming in quickly. That is, the first is agriculture and industries around agriculture. Second is MSMEs, and third is the self-employed sector, which is a large provider. The fourth sector, which is large industry. Again, I'm sure though you are abroad, from time to time you look at Sensex companies, but you probably don't do something which I also didn't do for 5 years. I remember Sensex companies from my time as a development banker, when if you look at the top 100 companies, 95 of them would be leveraged 1:3. 1 equity and 3 debt, which means that they are basically walking disasters. This was so right through 1970, 80, 90, 2000, up to the 2009 crisis. A lot of them repaired themselves. Some of them repaired themselves in 2000, was the reform process, some after 2009. But thereafter, I had not tracked this number. So I was just the other day tracking this number, and it's now the other way around. Over 90% or 95% of Sensex stocks, I would say 60 to 70% have no debt, no long-term debt. And maybe 5 to 10% have debt, which would be less than 1:1 against 1:3, 3 debt and 1 equity. So they are much stronger entities today. So they have balance sheets which can support themselves for some time. They're cash-rich companies, and they could support themselves for some time. So I think they will come back pretty soon into these into their business lines and so on. There again, they need the customer. So for this leg, you need the customer. For the self-employed, you need the customer. The MSME, you need the customer. The only leg which is ready with the customer is agro leg. Because there you need the supply chain. The customer is there at home, willing to look at it. Again, I may share an anecdote. Then I want to go to the fifth leg, and then maybe look at what are the sectors that will be in pain. But I want to go back to this first leg, which is very heartening. So the initial challenge when we were locked in 2 months back, how do you get the supply chain going? And I'll use our own building as a very interesting example. We have about 70 families here in our 2 buildings. The ladies got together, started a WhatsApp group, found out somebody who could deliver from the farm. We found a Nasik-based supplier called Sayadri Farm. I didn't find him. I found him on a Scootsie, the delivery thing, but the ladies found where he originated. Initial orders went on WhatsApp. The guy aggregated. Now, Sayadri Farm happens to be the largest exporter from India of grapes. And he's a large, I think, cooperative buyer. And then he's got the organization without, I would say, wherewithal. But he networked with ladies and this sort of WhatsApp group. Within 3 days or 4 days, I see he's got an app. And basically then he has moved to NEFT and, UPI payment. So basically he is in business. So he is now supplying farm fresh vegetables, farm fresh fruit, and of course, farm fresh mangoes. So I don't think this time's mango crop went waste. They got full realization, and most of the supply was from the farm directly to the end user. So less wastage, proper realization, and I'm sure the farm. I'm very happy if the farmer has done well. So that is. So these four ends will do well. The fifth end which will do well. So who were the guys delivering? The delivery was through the new digital economy. So basically, every one of us survived through the new digital economy. That is, whether it was Zomato or a Swiggy or a Scoopsy, these were the guys delivering. Who failed? Very interesting. Who failed? Amazon's failed, the Flipkarts failed, the Big Bazaar failed, no, the Big Basket failed, Grofers failed. They either didn't get the supplies in. Let me put it this way, what the ladies did, they failed to do. I'll repeat it for you. What the ladies did, and I've not said this anywhere before, the big guys failed to set up and organize a delivery system, including the last mile digital delivery. I went into one of the sites, I won't name today. 90% of the stuff is not there, and he keeps bombarding me. Now we are now open. For what? My local Kirana has tied up with Swiggy, Scootsie, and things like that. 30-minute delivery. And he's delivering faster than what he was delivering earlier. Everything that I want for my home. And now the Kirana has gotten smart. He's also got greens. So he has set up a green supply from the village, from the farm to his shop. And it's now getting packed in very interesting ways. It is not as if he weighs and puts it in. He has got ready 1 kilo packs of vegetables which is supplying. Today I saw these sort of packs. So what I'm saying is, people, I'm very heartened how quick they have been to learn and modify themselves, whereas the large guys are taking time to adapt. They will adapt. But I'm saying, first off the block was a small guy. And that gives me a lot of hope. Because you're talking of what? You're talking of millions of Kirana shops. If they survive, they provide employment, they put food on our table, they provide the supply chain with the delivery guys and so on. So I would think that there is a new India in terms of trade, in terms of business, in terms of reducing wastage and putting the market that is ready and so on. So I would think that these 5 sectors will come back. Will come back pretty quickly. I think the first and the last one doesn't need the consumer to be in a lockdown lifted state. The customer can still be in lockdown and this will supply. I talk of that one sector which I said is going to face pain, and that's my old business. That is banking, commercial banking. Not only in India, it will face pain everywhere. And this is where the interesting thing comes in, because you will have to look at this business as it's heading for a new normal. And you will need to look at where is the new normal. So what are the challenges that global banks face? And those are challenges we also will face. Customer cannot pay on time. Customer defaults. Customer defaults, you have an NPA. You have an NPA, the regulator says take a provision. You take a provision, it goes to the P&L. And to start with, the customer has not paid his interest, so you're not booking interest because it's in default. And now you have a provision to take. So you have an aggravated loss, a very large loss that will hit your P&L. It does not still hit global bank P&L, it will start hitting from the next quarter. So what happens? There is capital erosion. Then your regulator says, oh, but you've got capital erosion, get capital. So where does he get capital? Because you, all of you, and me, are smart enough to then say that, hey guys, somebody restructure these banks. I'm not going to put in fresh capital in. So they'll either look at the regulator or the government. At some point, the governments are going to say, we don't have the money. And then everybody will start thinking, how do we get the financial system back on its feet? They will take quite some time to think. That's why I'm saying, I use a phrase that it's a new normal now. The new normal is, why don't you recognize the problem a priori? The problem is going to fall in your lap in due course. And when it falls in your lap, it will fall with a very heavy weight. Instead of that, why don't you start addressing it now? Yes, people have started addressing. That's the good news. But there is a long distance to go. There's a lot of way to cover. So what have they done? So initially, for example, this time I'll use India as an example. They gave a moratorium on a repayment. They said, we will have a moratorium for a few days, a quarter or 2 quarters. Good. Now they have said they will extend it. I think they're on the right path. They will find that new normal will require you to basically provide a moratorium upfront. So the distress that the banks will face, distress the financial system will face, can be it can be a soft landing rather than a hard landing that we need to do. But this sector, I'm not going to talk about it. I would leave the experts and the regulators to think this through. I'm sure they will think through, because there will be a global coming together of minds on this to see how this system could be addressed. Now, of course, this question that was asked also related to, if there is a big stimulus given, if the government then starts running a huge deficit. See, let us put things in context. Everybody who is a thinker, from the IMF to our own economists in the country, to the central bank, to the finance commission yesterday, basically said growth is going to be near zero. Growth is near zero, you know the consequences. Your budgetary situation is not going to be comfortable. So your deficits could be higher. Again, I don't want to put a number on the deficit, but yes, as everybody says, deficits could be higher. Though I must admire the government, they're trying to keep the deficit as low as possible. The deficits certainly will be higher. This itself is a new normal. And then, of course, you have a situation where people say, oh, but the rating agencies could then fiddle with your ratings. My answer to that is it's a new normal. So if, as a consequence, the rating agencies are going to fiddle with your rating, so be it. But you will find a new normal in due course. Let me complete this part of it by saying, out of maybe 6 things that I talked about, maybe one is difficult, that is the banking sector. Others are not so difficult. And they probably can come back very quickly with meaningful attention, but they all require the customer and the consumer to come back on board, except food grain supplies where the customer is ready and you can reach out to him. So I'm sure this will be understood, and the broad plan that I see the government has laid out follows this path. I'm sure they would accelerate where they require and get us back on track. But this was a long answer to what appeared to a short question, because looking at the question that you had sent, I thought this was the best place for me to pitch this particular part of what I had to say. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. There are so many insights on different sectors and the way forward for us. I think there is a part of the question which relates to what you mentioned, the run or acceleration from the survival to revival that we are going to see or want to see in next days and months. The question was, what should the government do now in next immediate months? So one extreme is to put money into the hands of people. So put disposable money, and many countries are doing that. They're putting money in the hands of the people. On the other side, there is also an expectation that government can use this to recast the economy by putting some structural reforms in place. And how do you see both happening hand in hand? Because sometimes there is a push and pull between the both of them.
Again, it's a very interesting question. If you look at what the government has done, when they outlined the package that they had in mind, it was a combination package. They, some commentators probably did not expect it to be that way, but I'm happy that it was that way, because it is a combination of stimulus and economic, I would say, new thoughts. And those new thoughts need to be pushed further. So let's just take one part of new thoughts. One part of new thought that came across was, again, relating to agriculture, interesting. APMCs and the Essential Commodities Act, in a way, the repeal of these two things. Again, anybody who has been in the system knows how and why these have survived for long. And honestly, in today's world where, these, again, let me step back and put it in context. So the people who might not be aware would be, so there has been, and there was always a middleman in the system. Now, we may say that we don't like the middleman, but when I as a banker looked at it, again, in my past avatar, this was required at that point in time, because despite the banks being there, last mile credit was not flowing. The middleman was providing that flow of money to this sector, that is particularly agriculture sector. But that was 10, 15 years back. Today, clearly, the digital world has reached there. The Jan Dhan has taken a bank account to every person, certainly to a farmer who has the wherewithal to trade, produce and trade. So clearly, the time is right. I hope that that progress on that front is at rapid pace. And again, the first point that I said, the ladies have found a way to get the farm to their door. So the farmer today can very easily ride that platform, and that is what the government should probably leverage and push. I took one example. So there could be other areas similarly where there are barriers which they could look at, and putting these two together, I think, was a very good stroke. And again, when the Prime Minister talked of the whole process, he talked of livelihood, lives and livelihood. So articulating a livelihood strategy was very important. There's a lot that I'm sure they will articulate in the days to come, and this will provide again sustenance to the people who have lost their jobs. So I'm fully for opening it up and dovetailing the two, so that you have an accelerated pace at which you can go about this.
Absolutely. And Mr. Kamath, I'm from Devas, which is a place near Indore, and I've seen our house in Devas is very close to an Anaj Mandi. And exactly to your point about this middleman playing an important role, but at the same time, sometimes being the barrier for good and for bad. I've seen this firsthand, and I think this is very heartening to see that that's going away or being relaxed now. But many of us here on the call today are very closely linked with the manufacturing industry. And many of us see that India has somehow a unique window of opportunity to capture the share of global realignment of supply chains or manufacturing chains, which might be out there. So what can we do as a government, but also as companies and professionals, to boost Make in India further and make India the preferred destination for manufacturing companies around the world?
I think, again, I'm thinking on my feet as you ask this question. This has to be done together, in the sense that I would believe that a little bit of push and prod is required from the government also. This is not going to happen on its own. For example, till it suddenly was mentioned once the lockdown took shape in India, and before that, when Wuhan was in the lockdown, for example, the pharma intermediate chain in India was disrupted. I had no idea that there was such a large market for intermediate in India. The supply was from China. Now, we will need to go into why was this happening. I would have thought that, of course, ready answer is probably there's a cost benefit, but what is it that is required to be done to overcome that cost benefit? That's where I mean a push and prod from the government, and self-realization of an opportunity by industry is required. Same story with the automobile industry. I was at that time, India was still producing. I was told that supply chains could be disrupted because components are not coming in, parts and components are not coming in from China. So I think wherever we had very large supplies, we need to look at. The other key area probably we can look at is the entire goods that are required to support the digital economy. Now, this again, there has to be a strong push and prod by the government as to why is it not possible to develop these in-house in India and provide incentive to do that. And it could be the incentive could be a disincentive for somebody to import. So it could be so some hard action is required probably to incentivize people by putting in a strong disincentive at the other end. But this market is going to be huge, and this new development that have happened probably push this market to even greater heights in the coming years. There's another interesting thing that happened. Clearly, vast majority of Indian companies also realize there's one more layer of lean now possible, and that lean is work at home. Now, the factory may not be able to work at home, but all people around the factory could work at home. All other organizations which are only pushing paper could work at home. So I would think a massive rethink could be probably is required, and it's probably happening even as we think. And education, for example, again, could be a massive rethink in terms of what is required. For example, I would actually raise it as a challenge. Why do you require any physical IIT or any institute of higher learning? A medical college, probably you require the hospital exposure. The rest of it could be all remote. All other schools could be remote with the master teachers really holding the class. Now, it could be a hybrid model. What sort of hybrid, I don't know. But you are looking at things which we never thought of. It probably could be in the new normal. And probably we as a nation, because we have to build a lot of these things, we can now afford not to build them and move on. So we will have very interesting ways in which we will internalize things, and which we will be able to make at home, as it were. Not just the conventional things that come first off to mind, but a whole ecosystem of things that will come to mind very quickly. I talked about the 5 sectors. I want to go back there and add, and I added the financial sector as a sector which will face challenge. There are a couple of other sectors which will face challenge, and which we will have to carefully see what happens. If the time frame of the U is going to be pretty long, and the time frame of the disease also is going to be pretty long, and we're also not sure how the disease will play out, you have some challenges. So, for example, travel and tourism will come under pressure. So anything that is connected to that, whether it is planes, taxi services, organizations, travel agencies, and thereafter airplanes themselves, hotels, this whole value chain will come under a whole lot of pressure as this industry comes under one. India and globally, I think construction will come under severe pressure. They were under pressure. There's a severe price correction that is happening. That will put them under even greater pressure. And if new capacity that is required, built up capacity, that is whether it is homes will probably survive. Clearly, they will have to survive. But commercial complexes, there will be a rethink whether you require at all. I'm sure companies like TCS or Infosys or Mahindra or HCL, or people are talking today of tens of thousands of people working very effectively from home. So you will have a new normal in those businesses also. And the whole, in the sense that offshoring model, the so-called offshoring model that we have, I think is going to get a completely new nomenclature and a new way of looking at it. So when we talk of things moving home, a whole lot of other things could move home.
Absolutely. So I'll build on that a little bit, and I'm sure that you've probably been asked this question a lot, and it's probably become even more important now, that when we look at back in 1987, the GDP of India and China were the same. And now we fast forward to 2019, China is 4.8 times, close to 5 times the GDP of India. Even if you take on PPP basis, purchase power parity basis, it's still close to 2.5 times. So why is so, and what can be done, especially now, to change that pace and push India forward faster? And are we doing it? Are we moving in that direction?
It's an interesting question, because this is a question that I have tried to look at several times. Just to put a number in context in our minds, we talked of 87, but a more relevant number is the year 2000. China's GDP was $1 trillion, and our GDP in 2004 was $500 billion. And by 2004, they had probably gone to $2 trillion, because that was the heyday in terms of Chinese growth. And at that point of time, we started thinking our growth also was in near double digits. And I used to say that if we count, all our growth, and I used to have a joke, jokingly I would say we have counted growth, which was 9%, Then there was uncounted growth because our math was wrong, 1% or so. Then there was unaccounted growth, which is another 1% or so. So you allow for O&D, E&O, errors and omissions, growth was maybe 11% or so. So I would say we are about 6-7 years back, years behind. This is 2004. I think up to 2008, that pace kept going. In 2009, again, we won't go into leadership and things like that, but something happened in 2009 where growth, business is disrupted. There was a reversal of mining licenses, of environmental laws, and a whole lot of breakdown of various things that were in place. That started the process of slowdown. And to me, that is where the real break to our growth started in 2009. And today, on PPP terms, even if I assume we are 3 and China is 12, we will need at least between 15 and 20 years to come to about 12 trillion. Because even the government's own expectation of going from 2.7 to 5 was by 2024. So you need to add then from 5 to 10 and 10 to 12. So you're basically looking at probably a 15-year horizon. If we grow at between, I would say 9% to 10% in real terms, nominal growth will be higher. So that's a tall order in the challenge that we have at this point in time. Your question was not that. Your question was, why did we fall behind? Part of the reason I gave you, with all our challenges, we were maybe 5-7 years behind, and then we, for a critical 5 years, we slowed down, and we have not been able to keep the momentum thereafter because we had to repair those 5 years that we had lost, and now we have the COVID situation. But having said that, having lived in China, I can see certain interesting things the way they have gone ahead. They're still, I would think, interesting, I would say, guides for us. So when you look at Chinese growth, they did it in 4 different, the growth pattern follows 4 parts. First is waterway and animal husbandry. So got their water right and animal husbandry right. Second, the pumping infrastructure. Third, manufacturing. Fourth, the service economy, or basically the retail economy and so on. We all know it. All of us who have been there know that this was the path to growth that they followed. We have more or less followed that same path, except that our infrastructure investment was not of the same magnitude as what they did. So I think I look at India with great positivity because there is so much to do that there is, to keep us on a growth path of those, I mentioned 15 years. We have enough to do in that 15 years to comfortably grow at 10%. People will raise the question, where are the funds and so on. As a banker, I've had these questions put to me right from 95, 2000, 2005, 2009. So I won't go into that. Where you apply our mind, you find ways in which you can mop up money, don't create a huge fiscal deficit, still grow, have accelerated growth and so on. So I would think that it is important for India to set the target. The government did that last time around, basically saying that they want to aim at a 5 trillion economy by 2024. That's the sort of ambition we should have. We could be, slowed down by this U-shaped recovery that the world will have following COVID. I think we could get back on shape thereafter. I can't hear you, Pradyumna. He's off.
Okay, sorry, I got muted, and thank you, Samir, for unmuting me. So we have a very interesting question, Mr. Kamath, which was really got all of us thinking when we got that question, that we're all talking about COVID now. At the same time, oil prices have fallen dramatically. I mean, there were a month ago, we saw the futures trading negatively. Nobody thought that we could ever see that. But oil has always been important for the world economy as well as for world politics. So how do you see the impact of this fall in oil prices on the economy as well as in the world politics?
Yeah, I think it's again a very interesting question that has been put. For India, it's of course a very salutary thing, and I hope through our recovery from this challenge, oil prices remain low, because that will correct a whole lot of things that we otherwise would have to fight. That is basically a foreign currency crisis and balance of payments crisis, pressure on the exchange rate, and of course, finally, pressure on interest rates. So gives, I think, the policymakers a lot of room to maneuver. So I would think that this accelerates the process of recovery. Oil prices remaining where they are probably cuts the pain that we would have had by half. I'm taking a wild guess, because otherwise you would have to deal with a few other challenges which would have been serious. So for us, very good news. For the producing countries, I think it is bad news, because we all know why. But it's also bad news because this is at a time when a whole lot of consumption pattern could change. So if, for example, work from home accelerates, you will have a huge cut in demand consequent to that. Similarly, if you have to commute, if mass may not happen, but if autonomous travel happens, then you could have a change in demand. So you could see demand remaining soft, prices remaining low, and good for countries like us, which otherwise would have been net importers. So without any hesitation, one will say that it is good for economic progress in India.
Excellent. And do you see an impact on the world geopolitics of these prices or this change, Mr. Kamath?
Clearly, you are seeing positions being taken. When in a final analysis, I think positions will get hardened if you see economic pain. If economic pain endures and you have to take certain steps to mitigate that, then I think the geopolitical context could change, the geopolitical layout could change if that were to happen. But at this point in time, basically what you're seeing is, I would say, stands being taken and voices being raised. I would think it'll take just another 6 to 8 weeks for the West. So they should come out of their pain by then to take a stand, and we will see whether they really take a stand. Because my own view is, it is not that easy to change the current context of at least economic context. Geopolitical context, I'm no expert to call it, but the economic context is not that easy to change. By that I mean to disconnect from existing supply chains is not that easy for the world.
Excellent. So we have amongst our group a lot of entrepreneurs, and one of the questions that we had was, what can the entrepreneurs themselves, MSMEs, do to survive and thrive in these times? What they should do individually to take advantage of the government incentive, but also the new normal which is going to emerge to get forward?
Yeah, again, as you asked the question, I was thinking. I would think that the first step just now is to make sure that you manage to cross this hurdle that is in front of you, which would mean that in motoring terms you are on idle. So you need to make sure that you can stay on idle till you can engage gears and move forward. This is easier said than done. I'm saying it because I think that is what is required, but it is going to be a fairly tough. Luckily, if you are in India and if you see what the government has said, if it's an MSME, they are basically saying we are willing to lend you a helping hand. I would think that as we go along, the government will realize that they need to provide this helping hand even to others. That is, people who do not qualify as MSMEs, those who are otherwise stuck, how to make sure that they are on an even footing, an even keel. The government will need to come in to provide them a helping hand. But I would think it is just now a question of staying in readiness to engage gears. It is not going to be easy.
All right, sir. So I'm on to the last question that we have synthesized, and then I will invite Amit to, if time permits, and if Mr. Kamath, you're okay with taking us a few more minutes to go through the questions that we have in the chat. But I'll still ask the last question first. Is that okay? And then we go to the chat. Perfect. So I think you talked about the opportunities with digital and e-commerce, and I think the word that we hear a lot is the low-touch economy, right? Things which require less contact or contactless economy, and this could be an opportunity for us as a company, as a country, but also for individual companies to take this crisis and make it into an opportunity. What can we do to turbocharge our economy using this e-commerce or new technologies, as many countries did, China has done when the global financial crisis hit them? What can we do as a country to take advantage of this?
It's a very interesting question, and I'm going back to that first example that I gave of the ladies in our apartment building, basically creating a supply chain from the farm, and at the farm end, the aggregator, latching on, creating the delivery chain, everything digitally, and stuff comes nicely packed to your door. Now here, it happened on its own. It happened within a week. So a lot of lessons for me in this. This doesn't take time. This doesn't take a lot of effort. Well, it takes a lot of effort, but the supporting infrastructure is in place, and you can create it. Now, I took this as an example because a few years back, this would have been the most difficult to do in the context of a low-touch economy. But has happened. And in any other area that you can imagine, I'm sure you can do. As I was saying, the Kirana guy is the next guy who has gamed the system. So two extremes where we thought it would never happen is happening at very rapid pace. So I would think anybody who believes that his business could go this way should need to put extra effort to make it happen. And I'm sure education is going to be the next one. It is going to go this way. And I see this as the future, clearly. And who makes it happen? It's between you and your customer. I think the government doesn't come in, and the tech fraternity has put things in place. You need to go and leverage it. And again, I think we need to bust a few myths that the average Indian can't use technology. This myth, was busted for me in 2000 when people told me that nobody will use an ATM in India. How will the layman? He's uncomfortable in front of a machine. And you know what happened 5 years later? Everybody wanted an ATM. We're talking about very low. Today, the same thing I am saying. We said, older people will not be happy to use a cell phone, basically a connected device. I can tell you that older people today are manipulating spreadsheets at home and doing the ordering on a spreadsheet and sending it off. So when the customer sees the need, the customer is going to change. And at the other end, if you are the provider of the service, I think you see an opportunity. You should also be willing to change. And what strikes me, and I'll repeat this, I don't know for what, maybe the nth time, you don't need the government to come into this particular piece, the soft touch economy. All the bits and pieces are in place. You don't need any other bits and pieces. It's only you and your customer, and you working with your customer, it will make it happen.
Perfect. Amit, you want to take over and go through some interesting questions that we saw in the chat already?
Absolutely. What is amazing, Mr. Kamath, is that I think it's all because of you. We have finished exactly on the dot, which you're always timing everything to perfection, and this probably has happened this time also. So many thanks for that. If that's okay, can I just take a few more questions, Mr. Kamath?
Go ahead, go ahead.
There is a question that, what is your view on FTA? Indian chemical industries has not been able to grow due to FTA, as manufacturing petrochemicals in India is just not feasible.
Again, a very interesting question in the context of the New World Order that people, several, it was one of the questions that was asked earlier. Again, I'm thinking on my feet. I would think that a whole lot of FTAs will be re-examined. Because if you need to localize particularly manufacturing and or processing, a whole lot of change in mindset will be required on the FTA front. And if there's anything to be re-examined, I would think it is going to be the FTA. Not necessarily starting with India, globally. And clearly, we will also think of that as we go along if once we get the whole machine going. Good question. Probably will be relooked at very hard.
Absolutely, I agree with that. There's a nice question that has come in this time when everyone has realized the importance of agriculture commodity, and you also spoke about that, Mr. Kamath. Indian agriculture trading on electronic platform has now been promoted by almost all governments in India. Recently launched new agri index in Indian market known as AgriDex has become overall directional indicator of agri commodities. What is your thought on trading of agri products by farmers directly on this exchange platform?
Already happening. Happening. My apartment complex, the ladies are buying online and setting price with the Sayadri farms. It's already happening. I'm saying it in a lighter way. If what I'm saying is, if it already scaled at that level, straight to the consumer, I think at a trading level, sophisticated platforms are already available. You can take that for granted. What was not available was the mindset. And today, I think the mindset is definitely being forced on you, and you're seeing the opportunity, and this will leverage. This will leverage at a great speed. And disintermediation of existing structures will happen at a great speed. Whether the product will directly come to the table or come to a retail outlet is going to be moved. But even the retail outlet that is there could be a transit rather than an end pattern. So you will see a whole lot of change happening.
Absolutely. I believe you've already answered that question.
Amit, again, put something into context. What I see happening is a revolution on the Kirana front. On say agri, because the Kirana, I think the vendor today knows that he can be connected to the customer, and he can basically create a supply chain on his own. He's today relying on Swiggy or a Skutsi or a Zomato. Tomorrow he could have that end mile thing himself. Now, if he is linked at the back end to a large aggregator, now that could be anybody, and his stock is linked to that aggregator. So let us say 1 million of us order from this Kirana guy, whatever tonnage in a day. At the end of the real time, the aggregator sees how much is, like in your manufacturing company. You know what has happened to your stock. And overnight you have stock replenishment. So the whole value chain can be completely broken and reassembled in no time at all. Completely cutting out the existing system. So this question that was asked is revolutionary and will revolutionize the farm in India, because the time has come.
And I think, as you rightly said, Mr. Kamath, this is actually happening as we see it, isn't it? It'll probably happen in front of our eyes in the next few months, even on a pan India scale, probably.
Yes.
There is something which is probably interesting. This question is probably interesting for you because of the human resource nature. With regards to work from home, there are lots of reports and complaints within India that there is more stress in employees due to conflicting demands on employees and leading to communication challenges. So what should be the focus of organizations from human resource management perspective in this new normal of work from home in future?
Interesting. I must say this, that I have not faced it. I have been working now 4 months well, from January middle to now, from home. I have not faced that, and I've had day-to-day work. I've had video meetings departmentally, at the board level, the finance minister's level, at various levels, and things have gone go well on the week. But I can understand the question. I'm not trying to just wash it. What is required is, and it's a relevant question, what we are trying to do, I think most organizations are trying to do, is force fit, work in your office to work from home. The two won't gel. So you need to have a new SOP for work from home, which will need to be rolled out by all players. Now, I am sure and I hope that our IT colleagues are the leaders in this, and they would have implemented it. I think the banks have by and large done it. The others probably will need to do it. If these first two are not doing, then they need to do it. If anybody has not done it, they need to do it. But SOPs would be required to lay out, what are the standard processes to be followed in this sort of thing. But it will be overcome. If it is a challenge, I will exceed. There could be a challenge, but an SOP should set it right.
And this question is something which also is also popped up in my mind, because I come from this Guru Shishya Parampara. So extending to the earlier question, there's a question that has come in. I would also like to understand that work from home or remote education up to a certain extent may kill the relationship between the teacher and the student, or working in teams at home. So is this the right model for a long term? Will this be a sustainable model in the long term?
See, again, long term, this may not be a long-term model, probably happen in the hybrid model. This won't be the model that will endure. All I'm saying is that the vast edifices, the vast brick edifices that we have may no longer be relevant. This is like, again, banking industry was the first to be disrupted, from a brick to a brick and click, and now the digital banking only to click. Now, when the brick and click came in itself, I had enough people in the bank who were telling me that we were in India the first ones to tread this path. Nobody is going to go with you, because the customer still wants to come and sit in the branch, and he feels comfortable. I learned one thing: convenience is king. If you provide convenience, the customer switches there. So even in this education context, if it is convenience, he would probably move there. Now, if you provide a hybrid model, as indeed the banks have done now, I think that will be for the good. Now, in this model that you would have, there may not be human contact all the time, but there will be contact through live classes and so on.
Correct.
And who knows? Today we are talking of, we are on Zoom. 10 years back, I don't think I imagined that we could be on Zoom. 10 years back, if you remember, we were debating whether a cell phone could really take a high quality picture, leave alone video. Then the videos happened, and now we are on a multi-program chat show on Zoom. Now, the pace at which 5G is evolving, we would probably be having holographic images by then. And 5 years down the line, I would not take a bet now. 10 years back, I took a bet that video on the phone will not move at a pace which will make it realistic. But I can take a bet probably now that 5 years from now, a hologram will probably be possible.
That's true.
If that is so, you have a whole new experience that is happening. In a way, today, if you see, the hologram is possible with the eyewear that has come in, and only the bandwidth which is probably constraining it. But with India also hitting 1T in bandwidth, I would think that globally this is going to again accelerate at a pace which we have not thought of. So a hybrid model with the augmented reality, as it were, to drive things where you feel you need a touch.
Absolutely. Very well said. You mentioned...
It's very interesting. Today I was reading a very interesting, I saw a video from by I think CNN was interviewing this professor from New York Stern School of Business. And the professor said that only industry not to have disrupted over the last 100 years, and where price setting and price gouging is to the fore, is the education business. And he basically said he himself and his tribe have no business to be in business of educating because of education, because all this should have moved online. So you have got radical voices that are saying this at one end of the spectrum. And I'm sure that somewhere there will be middle ground.
That also, at the start, remember everyone, I had said that that's the amazing thing which Mr. Kamath does. He has input from so many different sources on a single day. That's something which we can always pick up. Mr. Kamath, one interesting question comes in that you mentioned the pain of the banking industry. Could some banks be in the similar danger of falling as they were in 2008?
I would think that the danger always exists. And in the West, the banks could be so large that the governments themselves may flounder. So I wouldn't, if there's a new normal, I would not rule out a global crisis in the financial services business. So as of now, nobody is talking. But 3 months down the line, if they don't come back, we will see some pain. Now, good news here is that in the West, you are seeing the whole impact of the disease tapering off. But you will see certain industries hit, depending on what is the market's exposure to these industries. That part of the financial services industry and that industry itself may take a hit. So, for example, airlines. I'm not pointing fingers. Warren Buffett says, bluntly that I'm selling my stake in American Airlines, and I don't know whether he had it in Delta. Then you know that something serious is happening to this business. So I would think that so anybody who has exposure to these sort of things would get hurt. But otherwise, if the U-shape quickly comes back, I think they will survive. See, one difference between 2009 and now is a whole lot of what I would call fictional paper that was created by the banking business. There was fiction I would say, hand in glove with the rating agencies, is not there this time. This time what is there is real, loans which were being using sweat and blood by and hard labor by businesses. That is coming under pressure. Whereas last time it was basically paper which collapsed and went up in the air, as it were. There is I would say, a structural difference between 2009 and 2010. And for the sake of all the businesses which have put their gut into running their business, I hope we don't come to that sort of a situation in a global context.
Absolutely. There's a very interesting question, and I started reading that question and also becoming a little philosophical about it, and I wanted your views on this question. The question is, are falling interest rates deflating demand and reducing, are falling interest rate deflating demands and reducing sense of wealthiness? I was also thinking wealthiness. What really is, how do you define wealthiness?
I will put that in context. I think whoever had asked the question is probably asking the question from the point of view of the saver who has money in bank deposits or in bonds, where earnings from that goes down, and your ability to purchase goes down as a consequence, and you feel not as wealthy as you were before.
That's right.
But this question is a very interesting question, and I'm going to answer it in the next. I think we are almost running out of time, but I want 2 minutes to answer. This is relevant to all of us. In the context of the way the question is asked, if it is your savings, hard-earned savings in the banks, you earn less and you will have a challenge, yes, that is true. And it is probably the time to be tight with this and manage it. So you will feel, you will have less to spend, and you will have, you'll feel less wealthy than you were. in the context of typically what happens with lower interest rates is where people have the money. So there will be also a part which is having the money. And money, either they're employed or whatever. There you will find that these people will afford things. And typically you will have them buying things. So you have two ways this could happen. People feeling not as wealthy as they were, demand constrained, and people suddenly find things affordable and going and buying things where they. But what I wanted to also say is that if I look at the vast mix of people that are there, I'm sure we have people in all age groups. My one advice to you, and probably we'll run out of time, is this is the time to listen to your financial advisor. And I'm not asking you to look at specific stock bets or things like that. But just remember what a financial advisor tells you. And this is so-motor advice, not as a banker, common sense. What the financial advisor tells you is when you are young, be in stocks and these things, you can have enough of equity to keep you going. But you are employed, you will keep. As you get older, move into fixed rate instruments, move into deposits and fixed rate instruments. Lessen your portfolio, lower your portfolio, which is in reduce your portfolio, which is in risky assets. By risky assets, your financial advisor typically means stocks, shares, and such like. I think this is the right time to listen to this advice because some of us who are old may feel that we are comfortable, we can take a risk with the equities. But if we are in uncharted territory, we are looking at a new normal coming in. So probably your financial advisor is the best person to advise. You can listen to his advice on what to buy and what not to buy. I'm not going to say anything on that. But his overall advice, with age, you should have less exposure to equity, more exposure to fixed rate instruments. Probably is good advice at this point in time for people who are slightly older. You can, once the normal comes back, you can recalibrate what you want to do. But I would think that the clue I got from this question is that I got a cue rather. I should answer this.
Absolutely.
Put this on the table, but I think it is probably right to be wise at this point. Then wise later when things have hit us personally.
This is perfect. There are still a few questions, Mr. Kamath, but it is really, I believe we have reached the crescendo, and I would really want to everyone to take this lovely message. Also, this message has some thought-provoking things which will happen. I would like to end the session, and I'd like to invite our dear friend Nandu to give a quick vote of thanks. I think we all want to hear from Nandu. Nandu, over to you.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Amit. Big thank you to Mr. Kamath. I think you seem to be in India like I am. For the last 3.5 months, I'm stuck, but I'm not going back to China now. I'm here, feeling good. And you're experiencing the efficiency of even the lockdown, and we have been able to work very effectively. I see that happen myself. But you touched upon such broad areas. I really appreciate what you did. And I think the impact of the economy in the current and the present crisis situation, that was great. I think you also talked about the way forward. Amazing. I think that was great. You touched upon the several gray areas that this group actually had to ask. There are a few questions that remain, but I'm sure we'll have some time with you later on, and we can communicate back to the people who asked those questions. You also defined the clear roadmap for the country, and in particular, I think that was outstanding. It was excellent, and I think you have trained 100 people in this call. All the capacity was full. I was seeing here a lot of people wanted to get in, they could not because that was the capacity limit. The overwhelming response, Mr. Kamath, and that's all we all expected. We were all looking forward to that, and the wish that most of the people express is that Mr. Kamath really become the finance minister of India and lead the country towards prosperity. I don't know. I don't need an answer, but I think all of us here, I was in China, we were in China, we always used to talk about him, to read something in the newspapers. But I think it's amazing, and that's the thought that people had. And the job for us is take the training that you imparted. It was a really very, very informal. Thanks, Amit and Prad. This was conducted so well. Everybody on the call, I think so good. I thank you so much for your participation. That was good. Your questions were outstanding. And you trained 100 people, then each of us have the responsibility of training another 100 more. So 10,000 people get your message from all of us. That was something great. I think your message on mindset, I think there's no, I think dearth of opportunity. The opportunities are plenty in this situation. The only area that is difficult to change, as you mentioned, is a mindset. The bottleneck is a mindset, nothing else. I think that's what it is. The education system, the hybrid, I think will go on. Harvard Business School has been talking about it for the last 3 years. They were planning to shut down their library because they don't see people coming in there. They were trying to redeploy the capital elsewhere. And many of the institutes, even in the Western world, the leading ones, are thinking about that. So what else? So many big thank you again. And this was really very effective, a closed door meeting. We feel so much connected to you because of your being in China for the last 5 years. You served as an inspiration and a learning ground to us. You know, we had access to you. We used to see you in the functions, and all of us here, most of the people here on the call are people who have spent time in China. They have met you, they have seen you, had chance to interact with you, tried to steal some time to get to Mr. Kamath, get a photograph. So all of us have a photo with you in our house. Thanks so much. So please, everybody, join me in thanking Mr. Kamath for the time that he spent with us. This has been an outstanding webinar for us. Thank you, Mr. Kamath.
Thank you, Nandu. Thank you, Pradyum. Thank you, Amit, and all of the friends who are on the call. I will just say this: this call itself is a function of the internet advances that have happened here. So when I moved in, I had a geofiber thing going. And then in the lockdown, I push it up to 350 Mbit. So I have a 350 Mbit connection. And today I set up Deco Mesh, which actually gives me the throughput that is advertised all during lockdown. So we can change ourselves in the lockdown. I wish you all well. Technology alive and kicking, and has made this meeting possible. Thank you. You are a lovely audience, and we had great interviewers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.